Raw meat, no running water, and strapped for cash. In this video, I'm going to go over the wildest story of me acquiring a rental property to date. So buckle up. It's a fun, hilarious story that I look back on and say, wow, that really happened. So let's get into it. About 2 years ago, my real estate agent called me and said, hey, there's an off-market property coming up for sale that you may want to take a look at. And so I was familiar with the area. It was right next to several other rental properties I had in a city that I really enjoyed buying in. So I said, okay. My wife and I actually happened to be in the area when he called. He said, nobody's living there. Go check it out, see what you think, and then we can talk and see if it's something you want to buy. So go to the address. There's no cars. I'm thinking nobody lives there. So pull in, walk around the outside, check out the property. It's a nice house. It's in a great neighborhood. It's a 3-bed, 2-bath home, brick on slab. This all came from my agent, but obviously I saw it was a brick home on slab when I pulled up. So looking around outside, some deferred maintenance, maybe there's some rotten fascia and soffit by the roof, but nothing crazy. Really nice house, again, in a great area. So I'm looking to peek through some windows and see if I can see what the inside looks like, because I was told nobody lives there. There was no lockbox to get inside the house or anything like that. And so upon me trying to look through a side door or a window, I start to hear a dog bark. I was like, that's kind of weird for nobody living there. And so I knocked on the door, waited for which felt like 10 minutes, but it's probably closer to 2 minutes. And I'm actually walking back to my Jeep because I heard this dog barking, but nobody answered the door. So as I'm about to get in my vehicle, somebody walks outside, a young guy, and comes up to my Jeep, and I explain who I am, why I'm even there, and tell him what's going on. And so he says, hold on for a second, and he walks back inside. A few minutes later, a guy walks outside that no shirt, few tattoos, looked like an older guy, which I'm assuming is his dad, which was right. So he walks up to my Jeep. Again, I quickly reiterate why I'm there and the reason for me walking around this property. He immediately gets frustrated talking about how many people has been calling him trying to buy this property, driving by his house, making him lowball offers, and just really, really frustrated. And I said, listen, man, I apologize. My agent called me. I was under the impression nobody lived here and that this was something that was for sale. And that's, again, why I'm here. So we built rapport really quickly, found out we may have some family friends, and I ended up talking to him for a few minutes. And he invited me inside, and to which I told my wife, if you do not see me in 10 minutes, call somebody. Didn't know what I was getting into, didn't know what the house looked like, and we've had some interesting conversations in the few minutes in the driveway. So went inside, and a side note, I felt it was inappropriate to ask to walk through his house and check out everything that was going on, since he had no idea who I was. I had no idea anyone was living there. And so invited me inside. I looked through. He kind of explained the situation. He said at some point in time they were doing some renovations and it didn't get completed for a number of different reasons, which is a whole different story on its own, some of these stories. And I said, hey, why don't I just come back a couple days from now? You can show me the property, show me all the things that's wrong with the place, and then we can go from there instead of me walking through your house right now. So he said, okay, great. So we exchanged contact information. A few days later, I show up, and I had a purchase agreement with me because I was prepared to make an offer once we wrapped up the property and I got to see everything. And so prior to me coming to this place, he had mentioned what he wanted to purchase the house for, or to sell the house for, I should say. So I get there, and as I'm walking around outside, before I walk in, I noticed in the back there were some big boiler pots full of water. And so we started outside on the tour, and I asked, what was this for? And he said, well, it's for water. We use that to wash our hands and shower and all of those things. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, well, we don't have running water in the property. I was like, why not? And he said, well, he gave me this story about, why they cut the water off and all of these different things. It's like, okay. So we finished the tour, go inside, and I don't know if you've ever seen these griddles, these plug-in electrical griddles where you can cook eggs and steaks and things like that on it. So he had one of those on the counter. The kitchen was one of the rooms that was up for rehab. So they had no stove, no sink, lots of sheetrock work that needed to be repaired. And on one of the kitchen countertops, there was this electric griddle. And he happened to be in the middle of seasoning a steak when I walked in there. And so he finished seasoning the steak, takes his bare hands, throws it on the grill. And just a side note about me, when it comes to cooking meat, I probably wash my hands several different times. Just messing with raw meat and cooking, I don't do too well with that. So I wash my hands a lot. I'll just keep it at that. So he takes the steak, throws it on the griddle, bare hands, does not wash his hands, start touching everything. And I'm like freaking out. Like, man, we need to get some of that water from those pots outside with some soap and wash your hands. So we walk through the rooms. Again, most of the house needed some sheetrock work, some paint. One of the rooms didn't have any floors in it. Some of the ceiling work was messed up. Mostly cosmetic stuff. Again, needed a stove, a refrigerator, some more kitchen countertops, and a sink. So we finished up, walked outside, ended up negotiating a deal, and signed a purchase agreement on the garbage can outside. We shake hands, consummate the deal. I get in my Jeep, immediately drench my hands with hand sanitizer from shaking hands of somebody that had raw meat from this steak on them. Drowns my pen in hand sanitizer as well, and then I leave. Send the purchase contract to my title company, and we start the process of going through buying or acquiring this home. And so there was a few things that happened along the way that really dragged out this deal because of the situation. So the house was for this guy's parents. He was living there, was supposed to pay the note and kind of keep it up. He was not doing that. And so the house was in a pre-foreclosure situation. So there was more red tape to figure out where the note was, get the payoff, all of that stuff. And so, several weeks later, we get to the closing table. And it's a dry closing, meaning we sign all the paperwork to buy the property. However, funds were not dispersed until a week or so later once we had all of the final count on where it would land. And so, I get there, sign the paperwork, do our part. He has two sisters that show up that sign their portion and they leave. Well, he's over an hour late to the closing, so everybody leaves. He signs his piece. And the title attorney is a good friend of mine, and I've done all of my purchases with him. And so he calls me back after, he shows up and signs his part and the deal is official. He's like, man, you're not going to believe what just happened. It's like, what happened? And all of this was very interesting throughout this whole process with the different stories. And, I would talk to this guy sometimes daily through texts and phone calls and trying to keep this deal together. And some of the things he was asking me or pressing me for cash because he was strapped for cash. He said, man, we get to the closing, we sign the paperwork, and I tell him we can't disperse funds because we don't have the payoff just yet. And he said, no problem. He said, man, can I borrow some money? And the title attorney says, well, I can't disperse funds because we don't have them yet. There's no money to disperse. And he's like, oh, no, I'm not talking about the funds from the property. I'm asking you personally, could you loan me some money? Now, what's crazy to me is this guy never met my buddy who's the title attorney. They don't know each other. It was their first interaction. And this guy was asking him to borrow some money from him personally, which he said absolutely not. And then they sign their paperwork, leave, and then the deal funds, about a week or so later. And so there's a few lessons I took from that. One, it was a really great deal for everybody involved. They were able to sell the property, get out from under it, not have to finish the rehab and all of the things that needed to happen. I was able to get a really great deal. I paid $87,000 for the property, and after rehab and all of that the things that needed to be done to bring it back up to where it should be, it appraised for $195,000, which was, again, a really good deal for me. I was able to rent it out to some great tenants. And again, everybody had a win-win situation that was involved in the deal. So some of my takeaways, one is when it comes to buying rental property, especially off market or actually on market for that matter as well, you have to be a really good negotiator and rapport builder. Now, what I mean by that is in this situation, he was obviously approached by several different people, phone calls, in-person visits that I had no idea about till I showed up. But I was able to build some rapport, get on the same ground as him, figure out what he wanted, and really listen to see what would make a deal, what would make you happy, what would make me happy. And so that was the first piece, getting on the same level and the same ground. The other piece was negotiating. He said what he wanted. I knew what I needed to get out of the property to make it worth it. And we negotiated till we got the terms right? A lot of times it's not so much the price that is the sticking point for people. It is the terms, whether the time frame you can close, how much money, what the closing stipulations look like, how much time they have to move out of the property after you buy it, all sort of those things. The other piece that I took from this deal was real estate is very much a team sport. So it is not something you get into and you do this on your own. There is a ton of different people that touch the deals and are able to make this stuff happen. So you have to build a really strong team if you want to have long-term success in the business. And then lastly, what I've learned is, especially buying several different rental properties, is it's not a quick process. Real estate is a long sales cycle as far as what needs to happen, the processes, and all the steps that need to move to ensure that you can buy a property, it has a good title, and you own it free and clear of how you should, and not have any issues after you acquire it. So in recap, hopefully you can see the things from the title of this video about the raw meat, no running water, and the seller being strapped for cash. Again, a really wild story to me, but very true. Happened about 2 years ago as of the recording of this video. So before you run, if you got some entertainment or some nuggets out of this, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel if you're somebody that has a day job that's looking to get involved in rental property investing. It's something I talk about each and every week. I appreciate you watching. I'll catch you on the next video. Bye for now.